I wanted to take a minute and just talk about something that's been on my heart a lot recently. I tend to worry a lot about things that haven't happened yet, things that hypothetically might not ever happen at all. And maybe you're the same way. Maybe take a minute and ask yourself, what is the thing that you're most worried about right now? Because more than likely, it ties to something that might happen or something that you're worried will happen if nothing changes. And it's that anticipation, the suspense of what might happen that is really powerful, and it messes with us. In fact, Alfred Hitchcock, one of my favorite directors, had this quote I remember reading years ago where he said, "There's no terror in the bang, but in the anticipation of it. It's actually the lead up that is scarier than the actual guy jumping out from around the corner, because we're worried about what might happen." And that's just what our minds do. You give us one little thing to worry about, and our minds will create and imagine these bizarre worst case scenarios. We're so good at assuming the worst in our situations, and so many times that's where worry comes from for us. And so I go back to the most famous prayer that has ever been prayed. Jesus shares this with us in one of his first public teachings, where he actually turns to the crowd that's listening to him and he says, "I'm going to teach you how to pray." And one of the things he says in the middle of that prayer is this. He says, "Give us this day our," everyone knows it, "daily bread." Give us this day our daily bread. And what he's saying is, when you pray, just ask for God to give you enough for today. And when Jesus is talking about this daily bread, he's actually citing back to a moment centuries earlier where God's people were in the desert for years and years and years, and manna would rain down from the sky, enough for them to eat that day. But not an abundance, just enough for that day. And then the next day, manna would rain down from the sky, enough for them to eat that day. And it was this pattern that they needed to depend on God to get through the day. And as long as they had enough for today, they were going to be okay. Because Jesus knows how our minds work. And he knew how our minds worked thousands of years ago when he first said this. And he knows how our minds work today. And it's no different that as humans, our minds love to wander. And if we're trying to get everything done that needs to get done today, and at the same time worrying about what might happen in the future, it's too overwhelming for us. That we need to kind of simply go back to that truth, and that challenge that Jesus is giving us is to just worry about today. Do you have enough for today? Do you have enough to get through today? Because if you do, there's no need to worry about tomorrow. God is ahead of us in our lives. That God walks before us. He walks ahead of us, which means he knows what's going to happen. We don't need to. Psalm 23 in the Message, he says this, "The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need." And I feel like that language really connects with me. It's just a very simple prayer that when I'm worried and when I'm anxious, when I'm a little bit overwhelmed or stressed about what may or may not happen, if I can just go back to that the Lord is my shepherd, and right now I have all that I need. As long as we have enough for today, we're going to be okay.